guys, Shaunee Brandon here with this month's YouTube video where we are going to be talking about but you're scared. If you haven't guessed, this video is dealing with fear. Listen, maybe somebody sent this to you because they said, listen, you are a scaredy cat. Or maybe you stumbled across it on social media or scrolling on YouTube, or somebody, who knows how you found it. It doesn't matter. You found it, you're here, you're now accountable to listen over the next few minutes because listen, I'm going to be talking about fear today, and I'm not talking about it as like this expert because there are areas in my life that I'm still working through fear and moments of shock and awe and all of those things. But I want to bring you into an experience today, and it's going to be great. So if this is your first time listening, I'm Shaunee Brandon. I'm a pastor, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, and before I go any further, let's put a pin on being a mom and a wife. I am at home recording this video on a Friday night, prime time, with a husband who's currently recording music in the basement, 2 kids and 2 dogs. And I always give a disclaimer, but I really need to give one today because it's prime time. Somebody is going to be loud. The dogs are going to bark. They're going to barge in. I don't have it in me to stop the video and start it over. If the noise comes, y'all just going to get all the noise. And I'm going to say, see, I told you. Okay. So they're home. We have a busy house. We got a lot going on, but that's that disclaimer. Besides being a wife and a mom, I am also a business owner and a blogger, and they kind of tie in together because I kind of started the business because of the blog, but the blog is spiritual, and this channel is an extension of that, where I talk about all things spiritual, all things associated with my faith and what I believe the Lord has laid on my heart, or what's beneficial to other believers and other people. But the business is an extension of the fashion side of the blog. The SB brand is my store. I sell fly, fashionable attire, faith merchandise, beautiful boutique items that I've curated, accessories, and then custom pieces that I design and create for consumers that are exclusive pieces, meaning most times only one of them is made because I am trying to give y'all an experience where you're not going to walk down the street and find somebody else wearing your stuff. Okay, so go check it out. Check out the blog. Please subscribe to both. And while we're at it, subscribe to the channel so that you can be notified of any new videos that I put out. But now that I've gotten all of the fine print and the disclaimers out of the way, we are going to talk today about but you're afraid. And what that means is you should be doing this, you would be doing this, but you're afraid. Dealing with fear, overcoming fear. And so I'm going to tell you a little story real quick before I get into this video. So I have 2 daughters, and I have one that's about to turn 12 and I have one that's 10. And both of them started off in gymnastics. They were in gymnastics, and the oldest decided that she really didn't want to do it, that she would rather do basketball. So she, because of the schedules and timing and stuff, we had to pull her out of gymnastics so that she could be a part of the basketball team at her school. But she told me that she liked gymnastics, but that it really wasn't her thing, that her heart was in basketball. So we took her out and we left the younger in gymnastics. Well, it turns out that the youngest really has a knack for it. She's really good. She's advanced. She's the youngest on the team. The gymnastics studio asked her to be a part of the team. She's the youngest on there, and she's really, really good, and she's excelled so quick. Even when she and her sister were in gymnastics, even though she's the youngest, I noticed that she was passing her skill levels faster than her sister, who was older. And usually when you see that, it's a sign that the person, when there's like, you know, a side-by-side comparison, and you have someone younger excelling a lot faster, it's usually a sign that that's more leaning towards their gifting or their natural ability. And so she's excelled. She's done so well. And so fast forward to us buying the youngest a trampoline for her birthday. It's a huge trampoline. It's in our backyard. We paid to have it assembled. And they've been on this trampoline since June. Okay, we're in July right now. Been on this trampoline since June, having a blast. And one day, the oldest comes in the house. Now, this story is meaty. And for those of you that have children, you know that God deals with you all the time through things that happen with your kids or uses your kids. Some of the things they say, the questions they ask, you're like, that was definitely the Holy Spirit, like pulling one and using my child to come send me a message. But the oldest comes in the house one day and she's sad and she says, I feel bad, Mom. And I said, well, why? And she said, well, I ended up getting the back handspring or the flip, whatever they were trying to do, some gymnastics move. She said, I ended up getting it before Kay, and now she's out there. She's real sad and she's real down and she's feeling bad. And I said, what? And then her sister says, this is what she says, okay? And sometimes I pause because I want to tell the story right. Because when you relay it the way it happens, the hearer gets to feel the impact that you felt when the person said it. And she said, I feel so bad. I wish I hadn't got it before her because now she's sad and I feel bad. And then she pauses and she said, but I feel like she could have gotten it and she actually could have gotten it before me. The only problem is she's scared. She said the only problem is she's scared. So then I go into mommy mode, of course, and I say, no, you don't feel bad that you got something before her. Because I'm all for teaching her not to feel survivor's guilt or the guilt that comes with success when you're experiencing success before a group of people that were trying to achieve it together, or a person or friend that was trying to achieve it and you got it first, or you're the one that got picked for the team and they didn't, and you feel guilty now that you succeeded and excelled. And so I needed in this moment to deal with one child, but also to acknowledge a message that was being sent in this moment. And I said, you never feel bad that you succeeded at something you were trying at and that you mastered it. I said, Kay will be fine. She's going to get it. But I want to point out something that a 12-year-old was intuitive enough to pick up. She knows that her sister is actually a better gymnast. She knows that her sister has been trained and has excelled at multiple skill sets that were needed for gymnastics and even to make the team. But here they are on a trampoline. There's no spotter, there's no coach, there's two kids trying to get this back handspring, this back flip, with no one really helping them except raw skill, raw talent in this moment. Either you get it or you don't. The difference between my two girls, even though the youngest has a natural ability and she has excelled in the craft, in this moment, what was needed to master a skill that she has not yet gotten is a sense of courage and the ability to take risk. My oldest daughter may not be the better gymnast, and she may not have wanted to stay in gymnastics, but that girl is absolutely fearless. I noticed this as a young child, that she was fearless to the point you would have to teach her not to take certain risks. Rides, get on them right away. Every roller coaster, everything, no fear, just go for it. Just a sense of, I'm going to do it and I'm not going to be worried about it. Not second guessing. Even if there was fear, if she second guessed for a moment, bam, she had it. Just a major risk taker. Whereas the younger is a lot like me. She's analytical. She's going to think it through. She's going to measure every angle, think about every possibility. And by the time she gets ready to do it, she's not. Because she's thought up all of these possibilities and the fear is taken over. And now, while you're trying to do the skill, your fear is talking you out of something. This is the thing that I want you to pay attention to. And I want you to ask yourself this question. What is it that you are not doing, that you are watching somebody else do, that has less skill, less ability, and less wherewithal than you? But they have no fear, so they're doing it. This scenario with my two daughters, the one that was actually more skilled and has the ability, allowed her fear to quench her ability, and somebody that does not have the natural talent was able to do it because they had no fear paralyzing them. This is where many of you all are in this moment, especially hindered creatives. If you're on here, all of my creatives, and if you're saying, I don't know if I'm a creative, I'm telling you that you are. We are made in the Lord's image and in his likeness, and he is the ultimate creative. Everything that we experience in this world is a reflection of creative ability. Even if you don't know what categorizes your creativity, you still have the ability. And most times, where we are most hindered and quenched is in the places that we have creativity. I am a creative. It took me a long time to see it and to own it. I write books, I write music, I create clothing, I have an eye for color, I have an eye for putting things together. There is all type of creative ability in my body, but the problem becomes, and I'm gonna come to something. I'm going to tell you why it can be difficult, number one, to spot your creativity, but also why there is fear associated. And so we're going to talk real quick about Gideon. We're going to talk about Gideon, and I want you in your own spare time to read Judges 6 and 7. Here it was, the Midianites had the children of Israel all tore up, just hiding, constantly at loss, constantly at war. And here it is, Gideon is threshing wheat in the place where you are to press wine, because he was trying to hide his harvest in a place where the enemy would not look for it. So he's in the wine press threshing wheat, trying to hide it from the Midianites, when an angel of the Lord showed up. And when the angel of the Lord showed up, he immediately did not say, "Hey, Gideon." He called him a valiant warrior. When the Lord shows up in your place of hiding, he does not address you by your name. He addresses you by your anointing. And he addresses you by how he sees you. And in this moment, just because Gideon didn't see it, because when you read the story, the first thing that Gideon did was respond with correction about the way somebody else saw him. He said, "Who are you talking to?" He said, "I'm the youngest in my family, and my family is the least of the tribes in the nation of Israel." He never said, "Oh, I'm a valiant warrior, thank you," or "You see me that way." He immediately corrected a person's perception of him to bring it down to a low place where he saw himself. And usually, I want you to pay attention to this. There are areas in our life that we are celebrated by other people, and they see our potential and our talent as something extraordinary, but we don't see it. And the minute that they bring it up and they say, "Oh, you did such a beautiful job decorating the place," or "You did such a beautiful job creating this garment," or "You spoke so well," or "Your children are so well mannered," whatever the compliment, you can always tell that a person is out of touch with their ability and their creativity and their likeness when you correct someone and you give back a compliment that they give to you and say, "Oh no, this old thing, oh, my kids, they don't listen. Oh, that, I forgot some of my words when I was speaking." When you take away from a perception or a title that someone gives you and compliments you naturally because of what they see, you know that you are out of touch, not only with your identity, your creativity, but your ability to accept what is on your life to achieve something. And in this moment, Gideon was called a valiant warrior, and Gideon was seen this way by the Lord because the Lord had it in him. And the first thing that he did was start to bring up excuses. And I want to point this out because, listen, I'm honing in on why you aren't doing what it is that you know that you are capable of doing. And I really brought up the story about my girls because often we sit back and we watch other people do things that we are naturally gifted to do and anointed to do, but we watch them do it because they have no fear, but we do. We're actually called to it and we're actually better at it, and we won't do it, and we'll sit back and watch them do it, and even sometimes celebrate their actions when we know that it is subpar in comparison to what we are capable of doing. And listen, I want to be very clear, because I'm going to deal with comparison. I am not comparing to point out you being up here and them being down here and to measure superiority. But what I am bringing up is this. There are people that will do things that they are not naturally gifted to do and they are not anointed to do, but it is a gap and a void and you're not doing it. So somebody else is going to step in because they see value in it, even if they are not equipped to do it. They're going to step in and do the job, and you will sit back and watch knowing you have the ability, but you will let fear talk you out of it every time. And so here in this moment, Gideon had a burden for the children of Israel. He was upset. He was in the wine press, threshing wheat, probably in there saying, now this is ridiculous. I am not supposed to be doing this here. The threshing floor was literally created for threshing wheat. It was an instrument and a place created to support the art and the act of threshing wheat. And for Gideon to have to take his harvest to a place that was for pressing wine, this place was not prepared for this. So it had to be twice as hard, twice as messy. And he's in there fussing. He's feeling the burden of what is going on in the nation of Israel even more. And the burden showed up. And as he was complaining, the Lord said, listen, you are the person for the job. It is very well possible that the thing that burdens you, the thing that you do not like, the thing that you see a solution for, you feel the burden for it. And the Lord is saying, listen, just because I come in here and I call you a valiant warrior, or because I come in here and say, hey, you're great at this, that's all that needs to happen. When you read the story of Gideon, you will see that he was titled, but that there were very much actions and steps that he had to take. And so I want to deal with what happens with your excuses, because when the Lord showed up to speak to Gideon, the first thing that he gave was excuses. Okay, excuses about who he was and where he came from. And, he started asking for all of these signs that he was supposed to be the one to be the deliverer. Because whenever we're doing things that the Lord is having for us to do, most times the job seems too big. Because if it was small, why haven't you done it? What would you be scared of? It seems big to us. It seems incredulous. Like, is this something that I really can do? And so in this moment, he started giving excuses, which is what we do when we feel like there's a job or a task or something being asked of us that is too big. And usually our excuses come with time, money, and education. Well, I really want to lean on time. I don't have the time to do it. I wish I had the time. I don't have the time, or I don't have the money right now, or the resources, because time is a resource. I don't have the money or the time, which is a resource, or the education. We feel like we don't know where to start, but I want to shut down the excuse thing. People have time and money for what they want to have time and money for. You'll say, I don't really have time for that. But then you will sit down and watch an hour and a half of TV, or sit on the phone for an hour. And that hour could have been dedicated to doing whatever it is that you're supposed to be doing. Or we'll say, well, I don't have the money for it. But I've seen people go to church and say they don't have any money to put in the offering. And these same people will go out to eat with you after church and buy a steak dinner. I don't have the money for it, but we buy what we want to buy. We'll go to the movies. The movies now, for one person, you're spending easily $25, $30 on the movie. Okay. So like I'm saying, We have time and money for what we want. And you may be saying, listen, $20 and $30 is not going to get me where I need to go for what it is I want to do. But $20 or $30 is a seed towards your stewardship. And the Lord looks at what you do with the 20 and 30 towards anything he put in your heart. Sometimes the supply that he wants to give is waiting on your seed of discipline to steward $20 or $30. And then he says they actually save $20 or $30 towards something that they know is going to cost $20,000 in faith. And because they did it in faith, I am going to give them the other $19,980. I'm telling you, when you're serious about whatever it is that you're supposed to accomplish and you're saying money is an obstacle, when you're serious, you save even $5, $10. You do whatever it is you have to do. Even if you say, I'm going to need to finance it. You start to steward your credit so that your credit can support a $20,000 loan, credit card, whatever it is, because you're serious about it. And so I want to remove the excuse of time and money, because I'm telling you right now, every little bit of time or money that you give is a seed towards your stewardship and your discipline and your faith to show the Lord that you are well able if given more time and given more money. Now, I do want to deal with education, because education is another excuse. And certainly, if you're dealing with wanting to be a doctor, a lawyer, or even some profession that requires a degree, of course, you're going to need your education in order to do that, because there's just certain jobs you cannot do without credentials. I know I don't want a doctor who's told me that he's watched YouTube videos to get his degree. I don't want you operating on me doing anything. I don't even want you checking my ear, okay, for an ear infection. So there are jobs that you are going to need the education to be able to do. But most times we use the excuse of time and money to prevent us from going to get the education. And we've already ruled that out. But if it's something like a certification, or you need to take a course, or you need to go ask someone, can you be their protege, or can they mentor you? When you are serious about doing what it is you need to do, you put in the time to educate yourself, to take constructive criticism, to become better. And I want to stop right there about the constructive criticism. And I'm going to get to that in depth in a little bit. But I want to say, sometimes the difficulty associated with accepting constructive criticism is that we feel like someone is trying to change us. And sometimes we need to change what it is they are criticizing in a constructive manner. And so you have to be open to this in order to be able to step into whatever it is that you're afraid of. Because if you're afraid and you're blaming it on education or not having the wherewithal, opening yourself up to constructive criticism, which is what will happen if you are a protege or a mentor, it is their job to provide you with feedback that does not necessarily feel good, but that will grow you, change you, stretch you, and also make you capable and enable you to be able to do what it is that you want to do. And so the excuses of time, money, education, if you're saying I'm afraid because I don't have those things, you are absolutely positively empowered to be able to get them to do what it is you want to do. Going back to the story of Gideon gave the Lord all of these reasons and excuses. He asked for 1 million different signs, all the way from putting out the fleece and only let the fleece get wet. And then the second time, I'm going to put out the fleece. Don't let the fleece get wet, but only the ground around it. Like, he went to great extent to be able to know for sure that he was supposed to lead the children of Israel into the battle against the Midianites for their deliverance. And I'm telling you right now, when you have put your desires and your requests before the Lord, and you're afraid and you're asking for his help and his guidance, he will give you what you need in order to be able to do it. He will help to supply it. If you're saying it's time and money, he will help to supply the time and money. He will help to supply the education, the relationships that you need in order to do what it is that you're scared of. And so I want to go to this point about the excuses are fed by our fears. Usually it is because we are afraid. And when we're dealing with fear, and when we're dealing with the story of Gideon, which really surrounds him being afraid and the Lord delivering him also through this process, while he was delivering the nation of Israel, he was delivering Gideon from fear. Gideon had a fear that was overriding his judgment, overriding his ability, overriding everything that was inside of him. And so while the Lord was using him to deliver the nation of Israel, he was using this situation to deliver Gideon. So if you're waiting to not be afraid, if you're saying, I'm going to do it when I'm not afraid, listen, it don't work that way. Some deliverance from your fears comes through your obedience to override them and have enough courage to keep moving forward. And so the thing that feeds our excuses are our fears. And if you're saying, listen, I'm only afraid of this, or I'm afraid of that, I'm going to bring up a few different fears that cause us to be paralyzed or immobile. First is the fear of failure. We have this idea that we're going to step out and do it, and we're going to do all of this, and then we're going to fail. It's not going to happen. We're going to be a laughing stock, or people are not going to want whatever it is that we're producing, especially creatives, those that are creating something. And I've said this before in another video. Creatives create for two reasons. We create as a release and therapy, but we also create for consumption, and not necessarily to sell it or for someone to buy it, but for someone to take it in and appreciate it, appreciate its layers, the time that it took, the thought, the creativity that we had to pour out into whatever it is that we're producing. And so sometimes to us, failure represents people not accepting whatever it is that we're presenting. We're afraid of rejection. And because of that, it keeps us in a place where we're immobile. We view rejection as failure. We view it not being consumed as a failure, or for it to never go anywhere, for it to just sit on the shelf or sit wherever. Or let's say, for example, you're supposed to be starting a business, and you start the business and then no one comes to the restaurant, or no one comes to the store, or wherever it is, and you feel like you failed. And so sometimes, listen, this is the funny thing. For some people, it's not even that they've tried once or twice before. They haven't tried at all. They're sitting there having a conversation with themselves, and they are their only adversary. They are the only person that has talked them out of doing anything. Listen, there's certainly a time that you share your dreams and your desires with friends, family, and they come up with all of these reasons why you shouldn't do it. And they tell you, well, that sounds dumb, or you shouldn't do it that way. You should do it this way. And I can understand having negative feelings if that is the case. If you shared your desires and those different things with people, and they shoot it down, or they make you feel like it's not good enough. But I really want to say this. I want to say that you have to be able to get around what people are going to think about whatever it is that you want to do. People are going to have opinions from start to finish. You could be flying high, successful, and you're still going to have people that have opinions. So you have to get around this idea that you're going to fail, even if the person who loves you the most and is the closest to you is the one to tell you that you're going to fail. You have to have enough confidence in yourself that this is something that you want to do and that you should be doing. And I want to say this too, in dealing with excuses about time and money. A lot of times when we use those excuses that are fueled by our fears, we have this thought that I'm going to do it later. I'm going to do it later. But of course, as you've seen, if you're sitting here listening to this because you are afraid, procrastination is an issue. And procrastination is fueled by fear and unbelief. Period. People that procrastinate have an issue with belief. Somewhere deep down inside, it is fueled and it is deeply rooted in unbelief and your lack of faith. And so I want to say this. If you're putting this off for a better time, I want to tell you, when you know that you're supposed to do something and you've made excuses that are fueled by your fear, as to why you aren't doing it, you start to feel worse and worse once you've acknowledged that it's something that you're supposed to do. Because once you acknowledge it, it becomes a sense of internal accountability. It may not even be that the Lord is saying you need to do it, you have to do it, you better do it. But it's something inside of you that says you're supposed to be doing this, and you know that you're supposed to be doing this. But you have almost like it becomes self-condemnation, because once you acknowledge it, now you're accountable to an action. And when you don't do the action, you start to feel worse, and you start to feel almost like a failure within yourself before you've even taken any steps, because now you're condemned by something that you haven't done. And I want to say this, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of spilling over my words because sometimes I have thoughts coming so fast, but I did not write down the scripture because it did not come to me when I was writing my notes, and I'll probably look it up later. But it says, to the one that knows to do good and doesn't do it, it is sin. And I've said this before on other videos. Sin is not always an issue of, we have these rankings, lying and stealing and fornication and adultery, and we bring those up as sins. But the Bible says when you know to do good and you will not do it, it is sin. And sin is to miss the mark or the standard. Whenever we're talking about sin, we're talking about missing the mark or the standard. And the mark and the standard is Christ. Anything that you see in Christ or you do not see in Christ is the mark or the standard. And we know that Jesus came and did everything that he was commissioned, appointed, anointed, and enabled to do. And so when you know to do good, when you know to do the ability that is inside of you, when you know that you are capable of doing it and you don't do it, it is sin. You are missing the mark that has been set on your life and the standard that has been set. Listen, that gives a whole new meaning to what a sinner is. All right. And so when you don't do it because of time, because of money, because of education, all of those things, and they're fueled by your fear, you are missing the mark. You are not doing the good that you know to do. And because of that becomes condemnation or a sense of failure or a sense of mediocrity. And you don't really feel good about yourself because you're not fulfilling what is on your heart and in your heart to do. Second, another fear that we have is a fear of loss. And this really comes down to when you are the one funding your dream. Funding your dream with your time, funding your dream with your money and your resources, and funding your dream off of the backing of other people. Maybe you've asked people for endorsements. Maybe you've asked for investors, or sometimes it's a loss of respect. And it is a loss of almost like this illusion of what you're capable of doing, and you've allowed yourself to believe that you're capable, and you've allowed other people to believe it. And when it doesn't happen at the level that you thought was possible, there is a fear that you will lose the respect and the belief of people that once respected and believed in what you were capable of. But I really want to deal with the fear of losing whatever it is that you are putting out there as a risk. Anything that you're doing that you're supposed to be doing will come with a risk. Anything that you're doing that you're capable of doing and enabled and even anointed and called to do will come with a risk. Remember, I said that my daughter is capable. She is skilled. She is proven to be an excellent gymnast. But the risk was for her to have to put her body in possible danger to capture a skill that she was capable of doing the whole time. And she did end up mastering it. But there was a risk that she had to take in order to nail it. Maybe your risk is for you to go back to school And it is going to be a risk of your money and your time. Or maybe your risk is to pull from your savings. Or for some people, their 401k, which is your savings, but to pull from it to be able to fund a business. Or the risk is going to friends or family and asking for them to be investors in something. There is always a risk associated with something even that you're supposed to do. We have this idea that because it's God's vision and he gave it to us, and because we're supposed to do it, that everything will just fall into place. I've heard plenty of people say, if it's God's vision, he will supply it. Yes, he will supply it, but there will still be risk involved. There will still be discomfort involved with you following through. In the story of Gideon, even though the Lord came to him and said, listen, boy, you're a valiant warrior. You're supposed to do it. You're going to do it. Get ready to do it. Gideon still had to take the risk. And I want to point this out, because when you read the story, and I'm saying when you read the story because I'm telling you to read the story and you need to read the story, there came a point where Gideon accepted that he was supposed to do it. He put out there 2 signs. The Lord answered with the 2 signs with the fleece. Gideon said, okay, I'm going to do it. So the Lord waited all the way till they got to camp. They set up camp and the Lord said, okay, Gideon, it's too many people here. All right. We're going to have to whittle this down. The first set of people that I want you to send home are those that have fear and trembling. Okay, those that have fear and trembling, I want you to send them home. They can't stay because there's too many. And if y'all win the battle with this many people, Israel's going to say they did it. And I need them to know I did it, because this was God's whole issue with Israel, is that they would get a little victory and then they would get proud and say they did it. And then he would have to bust them down a few notches to get them back to the place where they were asking for his help again. So he said, listen, I'm not going to deliver you guys with all of these people. I need it to be a number where they say the Lord Jehovah did this. So he said, listen, the first group of people that I want to go home are the people that are in fear and trembling. And this is what I find funny. So when Gideon announced those that are in fear and trembling, you can go home. What I love is that Gideon, this joker, was afraid the whole time. And the Lord didn't let him go home. The Lord specified and clarified, if you are afraid and trembling, this is a different level of fear. Okay, this is a whole different level of fear that's going on here, to the point that Gideon he's afraid, but he said the people that are in fear and trembling, meaning you have lost all control of your faculties. Your nervous system is breaking down. Not only are you afraid, but you're showing it. And for a man, that is a lot, to be a man amongst all of these men, and you're allowing yourself to show that you're in fear and trembling. The Lord said they got to go home. Fear is contagious. It can't be here. If they're in fear and trembling, this is the first group that I want to go home. They won't be any good for this battle anyway. But he allowed Gideon to stay because he was delivering Gideon through this process from his fear. And the Lord does not mind you being afraid, as long as you are still in obedience through your fear, because he's going to deliver you step by step as you follow what he's saying. And so the Lord created a situation where the first group that had to leave was those in fear and trembling. But the second group was those that got down to the water and they lapped up water with their hands, very dignified and classy. I probably would have been in that group that would have been going home, because I'm not putting my face in the water like a dog. But the Lord said the ones that put their face in the water like a dog, those are the ones that I want to stay. The rest of them go home. And so the Lord left Gideon with 300 men to fight a battle and a war against the Midianites. And the Bible says that it was so many of them that when Gideon and his men looked up on the hill in their camp in the camp of the Midianites to see them, it was so many of them and their camels and all of what they had that it said they looked like sand on the sea. So the Lord left Gideon with 300 men to fight this battle. He created risk. He never took the risk away. So if you are waiting for there to be no fear of failure, no fear of loss in order for you to move, I am so sorry. The Lord's vision and plan does not include a scenario where there is no risk. You still will have risk, but you cannot let the fear of risk fuel your excuses for you never to move. So the next thing that I want to bring up, which you may be saying, oh, I never thought about that, or that's not me, but a fear of success. Yes, the fear of success is a very real thing. And many of us actually fear succeeding, but we don't know that we fear succeeding. And I will tell you how you know that you fear success. One of the signs that you fear success is you start to evaluate what happens once the good things start to happen. Will I lose my friends? Will my friends say I'm changing? Will people start to talk about me? Will people start to want money from me? Like, it starts becoming very people-centered, or you start to worry about how you show up in life and in this world. I know for me personally, I had a few situations where I had random people reach out to me and find my information some kind of way where they'd see me in different circles or mediums or media on television or different places singing with different well-known artists. And I had people reach out to me. This was during the time where you could read album credits, and they got my name and they would find me on social media, or in a few cases found ways to contact me. And they would say, are you this person that sang with this person? And even though I was not the famous person or the famous artist, I realized in those moments how insanely private I am. I've always been private, but I don't want you contacting me like that if I don't know you. It is so uncomfortable. It is an invasion of my privacy. And I realized in that moment, like, a fear of succeeding in certain ways and being pushed into the public eye, or pushed in a place where I'm more visible, accessible, and noticeable. It comes with success, and there is a fear of losing some of the benefits of not having a certain level of success. Or you start to worry about how some of your relationships will change. Some people will not be able to handle the fact that you succeeded, especially going back to the story of my daughters. My daughter was actually sad that she succeeded before her sister. There was genuine sorrow in her face. And had she had the power, she would have let her sister get it before her, just so that she did not have to feel the discomfort of succeeding before someone that they were trying to come up together. And for many of us, a fear of succeeding before other friends or other family or other people is something that we start to quench ability, or we quench our light, or we quench the potency of what we're able to do. We only go halfway. We don't give it the full force of what we're capable of doing, because we're worried about succeeding at a level that will now put us in a place to where we make other people feel bad about their lack of success or their lack of ability. And listen, I want to tell you, this does not come from God. None of these fears come from God. And I want to bring up 1 John 4:18, and I want to read this scripture to you. And we're going to put it on the screen, but the NIV version of 1 John 4:18 says, "There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not perfected in love." Notice that fear has to do with punishment. You know that you are operating in fear when you fear that you will almost experience the things that I mentioned. But punishment, and some translations say judgment. Judgment is when you take into account something. It can be a situation, it can be something favorable or even something negative, and you put a finality to it. You say, because these things happen, this needs to happen. A judgment, almost like a judge says, because of the car wreck, she's awarded $5 million. Or somebody else has to pay $5 million. Y'all, I don't know what's going on with my screen with balloons and thumbs and fireworks. We'll figure it out later. In the meantime, y'all gonna get all these graphics that are popping up on the screen. But when you have fear, you fear punishment, you fear loss, you fear judgment. And I want to point out the difference between fear and I want to point out the difference between judgment and correction. Correction comes from the Lord. The one that the Lord loves, he chastens or he corrects. But judgment is something that someone does out of anger, out of fear. And so when you are fearing, it is because you feel like in some way there's going to be punishment or there's going to be judgment. And I want to tell you that does not come from the Lord. When you have those things, this is an area where you need to be perfected in love. The whole time that Gideon was asking the Lord for signs and pointing out his fears and all of those things, the Lord didn't come in and say, now stop being scared and blah, 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 blah. He gave Gideon what he needed. He loved Gideon in a way that made Gideon feel empowered to be able to do what it was that the Lord was telling him to do. When you are overcome with fear and you do not operate in what you are capable of doing, this is an area where the Lord wants to perfect you in love, and he is love. You are being perfected in him. You're being perfected in his opinion of you, but not just his opinion of you, your opinion of him. What you think about God is the most important thing, and it is the thing that will fuel even your ambitions, your dreams, your capabilities, and what you are anointed for. And so if you are struggling with fear, 1 John 4:18 is speaking to this issue and saying you need to be perfected in love. And if you are asking, how am I perfected in love? It is through fellowship, and it is through spending time with the Lord. And so I want to say this before I go. Also, some of the things that fuel your fears is comparison. When people say the comparison is the thief of joy, I know that that sounds good, but I do not think that comparison can steal true joy. I think what comparison can do is take away from how you see yourself, and how you see yourself is so important in your authenticity and in you fulfilling what you are capable of doing. So if anything, comparison is the thief of authenticity, not necessarily the thief of joy. It takes away what makes you authentic, because you start to fulfill what you're inspired by instead of what you're supposed to inspire other people by. Inspiration is not bad, but when you start to compare to the point that it takes away what makes you truly who you are, your thumbprint, what makes you authentic, this is when we start to have a problem. Then I really want to deal with this, and let me get to this part. Another thing is our pride and our insecurity. And I don't want to stay on this long because I talk about pride and insecurity almost in every last single video. But your pride comes from your insecurity. And when you are not perfected in love, you are insecure. And when you are insecure, you resort to prideful tactics, like not being able to be criticized constructively by a mentor, by someone who is taking you under their wing, or even customers, businesses that don't accept feedback or make it the customer's fault when they are telling you complaints or ways you can strengthen your business. Listen, this is coming from not being perfected in love, fear, insecurity, and now you have an issue with pride because of those things. Then the last thing that I want to bring up that I kind of touched on was your belief. All of our procrastination, our paralyzation, our lack of movement, excuses, all of it is fueled by unbelief. And unbelief is fueled by a lack of being perfected in love. And when that is the case, there is fear. And so listen, All of these things tie together. All of our commands in the word, all of our instruction, it is tied together. If you are sitting there saying, I wish I could, but I can't. I wish I would, but I won't. I wish I had this or that. I wish I had the time. I wish I had the money. I wish I had the education. And you've been saying this for 10, 20 years, even 10 days is too long. All right, time is passing and it's wasting. And the whole time, you know you're capable, you know you're able. And for some of you, you will not know that you're capable or able until you take the first step that you've been told to do. One day I'll tell you my story. I'll tell you a long list of things that had me in that place. And once I started to take the steps, the success that I was able to acquire when I got around my fear and took just step number one. And as I get ready to go, I want to leave you with this. I want you to work on eliminating every last single excuse of the 3. Eliminate the excuses through eliminating the fear, and eliminating the fear through fellowship that will perfect you in the love of God. You will be amazed at what you are capable and able and want to do when you know that you are fully and completely loved by the Father, and that He will never send you on a dummy mission. Gideon defeated the Midianites with 300 men, had 22,000 whittled down to 300, and succeeded because the Lord enabled him and empowered him as a valiant warrior, someone who was afraid, hiding their harvest in a place that it did not belong. This is how the story started, and you see the way it ended. I am saying to you, what are you sitting back watching somebody else do that you know that you are capable of doing and doing better, but they're not afraid and you are? What is it that you have written down and have vision for and have spoken of for years, but you won't do it because a fear of failure or a fear of loss or a fear of success? And notice I did not bring up a fear of death, even though this was really Gideon's issue, because when the Lord first spoke to his fear, He said, do not be afraid, you will not die. That let me know that what Gideon was truly afraid of was death. For some people, they are afraid of death. But in cases where you are supposed to be operating and doing something, most times it's not a fear of death that we're really afraid of. It is the things that I mentioned, the minor things that keep us from mobilizing. Now, when you're talking about going off to war, or maybe going to a mission field that is pretty dangerous, I can understand a fear of death. But the rules still apply. That when you're perfected in love, the perfection of love removes the fear that is a fear of judgment or punishment. And death certainly feels like judgment and punishment. So whatever your fear is, whatever it is that is keeping you from standing up to the mark, knowing to do good and doing it, whatever it is, you are free to be delivered from it through your fellowship with the Father that perfects you in love in that area and enables you to be able to do what it is you have in your heart to do, what it is He put in your heart to do, and what it is you are enabled, capable, and anointed to do. Listen, no more excuses. You would be doing it, but you're afraid. Come on, y'all. It's time to step outside of the fear. This is the time the Lord has need of you. You have need of you. Okay? You want your life to be better. You want to level up. Come on, get in the presence of God. Let Him deal with fear. You're capable. I believe in you. You believe in you. The Lord believes in you. All right? Listen, maybe I'll come back, talk next month about it, tell my story, but thank you for tuning in. And listen, it is time to do it. I'm Shaunee Brandon. Subscribe to the channel. Go to my website, ShauneeBrandon.com, where my blog is, www.thesbbrand.com, where the story is. Follow me on social media. I'm there. You can find me. I love y'all. All right.